All right, today we start at Shemot, also known as Exodus, chapter 38, verse 23. Literally in English it says, "And he, Ahaliab, son of Ahisamach, to staff Don, craftsman, and image, and woven, and violet, and in purple, and scarlet, the crimson, and in linen." There's really no new words here. What were we laughing about? Well, yeah, we saw a commercial for a cartoon TV show, and the guy opens up the door and he says, "Everybody will now call me by my new Hebrew name. It's so Sama kind of reminded us of that, I guess. Anywho, no new words here. I mean, I don't think we've talked about the word dawn. It's spelled D-A-N, pronounced dawn. It's people in America call it Dan, the tribe of Dan. Remember, this is where they say lemate, which is to the staff, because a tribe is recognized by the staff. You know, the leader has the staff that has the name of the tribe and other pertinent information about the tribe on the staff. It will not have graven images on the staff, but it will have words, you know, things about the tribe on it. So they say to the staff, meaning in our world to the tribe. They called him Harash, which is a craftsman, an engraver of stones, an artificer, an artiste, in other words, of iron and brass and stone and wood, a smith, mason, or a carpenter. It can be any kind of arts and crafts, if you will. And then it says Vechoshev, which is a word we haven't really talked about in a while. This is that to meditate, to think things up. This was a guy who had a heck of an imagination. You know, you could tell him, well, I want a little box over here in this side of the house, and I don't want it more than 3 feet wide, more than 30 inches high, and more than a foot out from the wall, but I don't really know what I want it to look like. I want it reminiscent of the Iron Age or something. And this guy would just imagine something, put it together, and you'd look at it and say, it's exactly what I was thinking. Even though it's not what you were thinking, it's what he was thinking. So he was very imaginative. And he worked, it says, in woven things. And then it says, it gives that word for violet. We're guessing it's from the shellfish. It's a blue, violet, purplish color. And then in purple, which they say is reddish. These colors would have been very similar because the next one is for scarlet, and the next one is for crimson. And then it says uvashesh, and so of course that's linen. That's that sound alike and spelled alike word, shesh. It can either mean the number 6, or in this case, linen. So the translation is, and Haliab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, crafted and created and wove in violet and in purple and scarlet and crimson and linen. I thought I was going to put a note in here. I guess I forgot to do it, or maybe I put the note in another one that was going along these lines. But if you read the Talmud, and pretty much anything written by, predominantly the things that you read in the Talmud come from the Dark Ages. It comes from the 1200s into 1213, as late as the 1500s. It was mostly the late 1100s through the 1200s. That's the vast majority of it. That's where you get Maimonides and Rashi and all these other guys, none of whom spoke Hebrew at all, but were experts in Hebrew somehow. Everything that they did came from the Aramaic. Because there's a story in the writings of Maimonides where somebody is supposedly wrote him a letter saying that he was having trouble understanding the Hebrew, and Maimonides wrote him back and said, well, just try a little harder, Hebrew's better. And the truth is, Maimonides never wrote anything in Hebrew, not one thing. So it's folklore somebody added to the works of Maimonides. It's certainly, if Maimonides wrote it, he was a bald-faced liar. I'm just saying. So I don't really think he did it. I think somebody else was trying to smooth it over when people started realizing that these supposed greats of the Bible couldn't even read the Bible, because the Bible's in Hebrew. It is not in Aramaic. That Aramaic stuff is what we call a translation, and it is no better than anybody's translation in any other language. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Bible was meant only to be read and understood in Hebrew, not in any other language. So when you start trying to understand it in another language, there's going to be a lot of problems. And if someone's going to explain those things to you, it's going to have to be somebody who understands the Hebrew language. I'm just saying. It's what it's got to be. So, but if you read anything from these guys and from the Talmud, all you're going to ever read about is how all the women did this. This was a woman's job. The women were happy to do it, blah, blah, blah. And you read the Bible itself in Hebrew, it says men did it. All right, verse 24, literally in English, it would be all the gold in California is in a bank. Oh, no, that's not what that says. All the gold that made or done, could be either word, to occupation in all work, the holy. And it was gold, the wave, 9 and 20 pieces, and 730 shekel in shekel, the holy. It's really not all that hard to understand. Of course, you start off with kol, which means all, totality, so it's every bit of it. Ha-zahav, all the, literally we say gold, but I mean literally it's all the shiny stuff. But they are talking about gold as the shiny stuff. They're not talking about silver as the shiny stuff. But it's to shine. It's of the splendor of gold when it's refined, to its greatest level and all that kind of stuff, because of how shiny it is. But the word is all about the shine. It's really not about the gold. And then it says all that he'asui. Pegisui. Asui. Right, you're going to remember that, right? Properly to labor, to work about anything, to make, to produce by labor, to manufacture, to fabricate. Y'all guessing what this word is? Asa. You know what it is. So all of it was created by this shiny stuff that we call gold. La melaha. Now this is literally to occupation. It's properly its service, hence work prescribed to anyone, especially of the work of an artisan, the property or wealth of anyone, especially cattle, because if he owns a lot of cattle, his occupation is probably he's a cattle rancher. Just saying, that's where that idea comes from. It's from the root la'ach, which is to send a messenger, to be sent, to wait upon, to minister, a servant, which is where we're getting this idea. All of this gold from which things were created were for the service, for the occupation of, right? And then what are we going to say? Then it goes on, lechet, the occupation and the work, the service, that's another word from the same word, la'ach, ha-kodesh. It's from the work and the service of the holy, literally. Kodesh, holy, ha-kodesh, the holy. Right, it's holiness, it's things that are consecrated to God, especially in silver, consecrated to the temple. But this is the word they use for sanctuary, right? Because when we think of a sanctuary, they called it the holy. And then inside that sanctuary was the holy holy, which we now call the Holy of Holies. Whether that actually comes from the Christians, and of course the Jews latched right onto that. Why? Because they steal it from the Christians? No, it's because that's why we talk in English. It's the same. Anyway, Vayahi, and it will be, it became Zahab. It became gold. Wait, what? The gold made into gold was the service. It became gold? What? No, it was gold. Ha tenufa. It was the gold of The wave, it was the offering, remember the big offering? Hey, everybody, we're going to build something. Everybody send us some things. That's all they're trying to tell you is this is the gold that came from that big offering. So it's the wave. Teshah, which is the word for 9. Ve'esrim, 9 and 20. So it's 29. Ki kar. It's 29 pieces of gold, 29 round things of gold. Because it's ki kar is the word for circular, roundy round. Like picture a coin would be your best bet here. This is Usheva. That's the word 7. Like Queen of Sheba, Queen of 7. Me'ot, 7, Me'ot is 100. It's 100 in plural. Because if you got 100, you have way more than a singular. Just saying. That's why it's in plural. Sheloshim, which is and 30. So then we have shekel. A shekel is a certain weight of gold and silver containing 20 beans, which the Hebrews used when weighed. Now, this stuff here about the beans comes out of the Dark Ages. We don't know if this is true or not. We don't even know where they got this idea. But this comes from the Dark Ages, 1200-ish. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Anyway, 20 beans, which the Hebrews used when weighed for money. Of this, there are 2 kinds distinguished, the holy shekel and the royal shekel. But which was the larger and which the less of these is not stated. Yeah, actually it is. We've already gone over this. The shekel for the temple was half a shekel. It says it in the text. It goes on and says, in the time of the Maccabees, 1st Maccabees 15:6 to be exact, silver coins were struck of the weight of a shekel, bearing the inscription shekel, Yisrael. That's actually what it said in Hebrew. The coins contained 4 Attic drachmas, which is 1 stater, according to Josephus, in what ARCH stand for? Archaeology 382. I don't know what, because he wrote Wars, and what's the other one I use all the time? History. I don't really know what that one is, but it's one of his writings. Book 3, chapter 8, verse 2. According to Josephus, nor does the weight of those still in being differ much from this. Okay, they're trying to figure out what this is, and what they're doing is by looking at what Josephus wrote, they're coming up with it's about 60 grams, which are equal to 1 drachma. Then it says, however, the Septuagint often rendered shekel as didrachamon, which may be thus reconciled with the words of Josephus and the weight of existing coins by supposing that the shekel before the use of coined weight was a smaller weight, of less value and weight. It's too confusing. The truth is nobody knows. Nobody knows what this weight is. I mean, it's just lost to history because there was just never any. The reason why no one wrote down something very specific is because at the time everybody knew what it was. It's one of those. It was just so common that nobody thought to, hey, a couple thousand years from now, people aren't going to know what this is. They weren't thinking in those terms. All right, so then it's shekel. This is besh shekel, which is shekel in shekel or shekel with shekel. HaKodesh, so it's a shekel for the sanctuary shekel. All right, so our translation is, all the gold was made for the dealings of all the work of the sanctuary. And the gold of the wave offering was 29 pieces and 730 shekel total cost of the sanctuary. They really are trying to tell you how much was used because they tell you two things in this chapter: how much was given and how much was used. Now, it's not exact. It doesn't tell you that on every last thing, because this was just an overview. It wasn't meant to be a detailed profit and loss statement. It was just an overview to kind of give people the idea of what the sanctuary was like. They weren't trying to reconcile for the people so that they knew that nobody was, spending the money wrongly or something like that. That's not what was going on. What they were trying to do is give you an idea of just how much splendor, how beautiful this place was. Anyway, we can compare that to chapter 30, verse 13. All who are counted, and we're talking about, this is, what do you call that, where you're counting people? Census. All who are counted will give 1/2 shekel, with a shekel in the sanctuary, 20 gera, which is 1/20th part of a shekel. Somehow they know that. The 1/2 shekel is the shekel offering to Yahweh. Right there's the contradiction to what we said. Right there it tells you that the sanctuary shekel was 1/2 shekel. All the gold of those words. Even Ezra pointed out that this chapter points out the text gave us the use for the silver, but not for the gold. It told us what they used the silver, what they did with that and what it was used for, but not for the gold. And as long as he's sticking with this chapter, I agree, but we are told what the gold was used for. I'm just saying. Onkelos by Drauzine and Wagner. That's, if you're going to read Onkelos, this one is a very good work, and it's the one I would recommend. It's a 5-volume set. Just happen to have it. Whoopsie. Lose half everything I own, right? That's one of the books. There's 5 of them. They're all about this size. It's the 5 books of the Torah. It has inside it the translation of the Hebrew. Don't know if you can actually see that or not. Probably not. Probably too white. But it has the translation of the Hebrew. It has the translation of not a translation. It has the Hebrew text. Then it has a translation of that into Aramaic, and then it has a translation into English. They did a very good job on the English translation, though it's based more on the Aramaic than it is on the Hebrew, and I wouldn't have done that. But these two guys know what they're doing, don't get me wrong. What in the world? My daughter's hair just beeped. Anyway, it's a good work, and if you don't have it, get it. It's worth it. It's a little pricey, I think, but, well, for mouse people like me, but for, I don't know how that sounds good anymore. Anyway, they state the following. Saporno notes the amounts of precious metals were insignificant compared to the opulence of King Solomon's temple. And then, of course, they're pointing out 1 Kings chapter 6, verses 20 through 35, and chapter 7, verses 48 through 50. And I totally agree with that. This is nothing in comparison. And especially the extravagance of Herod's temple. So it's like the tabernacle in the wilderness, and right now they're really trying to paint it up and tell you, but this thing was beautiful. It's really nice. But then what Drauzine and Wagner are trying to point out, well, that was nothing compared to what Herod's temple or Solomon's temple was, and then Solomon's was nothing compared to Herod's. It just kept getting better and better and better. And then they went on and said, especially the extravagance of Herod's temple, Babylonian Talmud, Sukkah 51b, if you want to read about it. Nevertheless, and by the way, if you're going to get the Babylonian Talmud, get the Somsino. It's fabulous. It has the Hebrew and it has the English. And if you're, an English speaker predominantly, you'll really like it. If you speak Hebrew, I think you'll like it too, because the commentary in it's really well done. That's all in Hebrew though. So anyway, well, not all. Yeah. They don't really. They give you information about the Hebrew text itself, and they'll tell you some of the things that, say, Rashi or whoever said, but they don't really go into great detail on that part. So if you don't read Hebrew, you miss out on some things. Odd part is there are things that are in Hebrew that don't show up in English, and there are things that are in English that don't show up in the Hebrew. So if you're bilingual, then you'll really like the book. But anyway, I think that if you speak English as a first language and you're going to get a set of Talmud, this is the one to get. By the way, when you buy the set, they'll tell you it's a 31-volume set. You'll buy it, you'll get like 26. And you're supposed to know this somehow, but there's a significant number of those books that are not in publication anymore. So what I did was I bought the set, discovered that it wasn't all there, and then I got on the internet, tracked down the missing books, and so I actually have the whole set. But I love these books. They're wonderful. Anyway, so if you're going to get it, get that one, the Sonsino. It's just my own humble opinion. You can get any one you want to, truthfully. They go on. Nevertheless, God's glory rested within the tabernacle, and to a lesser degree in the first temple, but not at all in Herod's temple, which is not exactly true, but that's what they say. He concludes that, who were we? Sephorno. He concludes that it is not the richness and size of a building which attracts God's presence. God prefers righteous deeds. Okay, that's a little out there, but you can see why he would say it, because you build this tabernacle in the wilderness, and it's pretty snazzy, but nothing in compared to the first temple, and God shows up there in a big way. You build this really snazzy first temple, God shows up there, but not to the same degree as out in the wilderness. And then you build this really fancy one, and as far as they're concerned, because they don't want to believe in anything in the first century, as far as they're concerned, God never showed up ever again in the big one. So they're like, well, God's not impressed with the big stuff. Okay, well, go out and build you a less fancy tabernacle out in the wilderness and see if God shows up. Oh, wait, they already did that. It stands. Even now. They even apparently have one in Pennsylvania. But they also have one in the Judean desert, out there pretty much where it used to be. And no fire coming down there. And all these people living by all these good deeds, how come there's no fire? It don't have anything to do with the lavishness or how much gold was used or any of the deeds or anything. God does what God wants to do, when he wants to do it, where he wants to do it. And that's all there is to it. Moving on. Verse 25, and literally in English, and silver numbered the Edah, 100 pieces and 1,000 and 700 and 5 and 20 shekel in shekel the holy. I do not like the numbering system in Hebrew. I don't like it at all. I find it very confusing. But anyway, the chesef, which is, the word for silver. And so in the silver, pekude, it numbered, counting it up, so, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. Y'all get the idea, right? Of the Edah, or that which was used in the Edah, was me'at, which is 100. It's still in plural, so it should probably be hundreds. Ikar, remember that, the roundy pieces, so think of a coin, that's the best way to do it. Ve'elef, and 1,000. So we had 100. Is there another number before that? I don't remember. It numbered 100 and 1,000, not 100,000. 1,107. And 5 and 70, so 75 shekel. In the shekels, or with the shekels with the shekels, for the holy, for the sanctuary. So what are they saying? They're saying, and the total amount, that's the word for numbered, the total amount of silver offered by the Adah. See, everyone turns that around and makes it, this is the stuff that was used in the silver, or the silver that was used in the tabernacle. And then they turn around and see, well, here's some other silver and here's some other silver, and that wasn't counted. And oh my gosh, we got a big problem. Is the book's all messed up. No, here they're telling you what was given by the Adah, by the people, was 1,100 pieces and 775 shekel total cost of the sanctuary. So the previous verse gave us the amount used in the construction. Here we are told the total amount that was offered. There is no mistake here. All right. Now in our next verse, there are two problems which we now face. First, Bamidbar, that's Numbers 1, chapter 1, verse 1, and chapter 1, verse 8, places the census on the first day of the second month of the second year. This is a problem because Shemot, in other words, Exodus chapter 40, which we haven't reached quite yet, we're getting close though, Exodus chapter 40, verse 2 and verse 17 places the census on the first day of the first month of the second year. This may be a mistake, or there might be an explanation. So remember, in Bamidbar, we have the first day of the second month of the second year. In Exodus, we have the first day of the first month of the second year. Second, then that's just the first problem. The second one is in Bamidbar, or in Numbers chapter 146. It gives us the numbers 600,003, 550 as the total of the census. So how did anyone know this number here in verse 26 of Shemot 38:26? Basically, this means that the number from the census was somehow known before it was taken. Not going to happen. Wouldn't be prudent. So let's take a look. I'm betting there's an explanation. All right, so in 26, just not about to look at the clock. We got time. Half to skull, half the shekel in shekel of the holy, to all that pass upon the numbers from some 20 year and upwards to 600,000 and 3,000s and 550. All right, so it's bekah, which is half. It's the idea of dividing something in half. Then it says lu gulgolet. Gulgolet, that's the skull. Mahazit, that's another word for half or maybe the middle. Ha shekel, that's the shekel. Be shekel, the shekel in the shekel. Ha kodesh, so it's for the, what have they been calling it, the tabernacle? The sanctuary, that's the word I'm using. Lechol, that's to all, that's the totality. Ha ober, that to pass, to cross. I'm trying to think of a way to make that make sense. They're talking about the skull, right? And so you're going through a procession, you're walking in line and they're saying 1, 2, 3, 4. They pass over, they pass and pass the person doing the counting, right? That's because that's what they're talking about here. It's a census. All, which means upon or over or towards. And then it says ha pekudim. So that's the numbers. Niben, from sons esrim. So from sons of 20. That's how they say from the age of 20. Shana, from the age of 20 years. Uma la, and upwards. So everyone that was 20 years old or up, that was walking through this procession, and everybody in their skulls were being counted. Leshesh, it says to 600, 600s, 11,000. U sheloshet, and 3. Alafim, thousands. Ve hamesh, and 5 me'ot, hundreds. Ve ha mishim, and 50. All right, so here's your translation. A half shekel, that's a bekah. A half shekel per person. That's the skull. Per person is how we would say it. One half the weight of a shekel. That's an idiom because what they said was from the half shekel. That means one half the weight of a shekel. It was the weight of the tabernacle shekel. So here, if you weren't clear about it in the last couple of verses, I don't know how you can not be clear about it in this one. They're telling you that the shekel of the temple is half the weight of a normal shekel. Anyway, for everyone that was counted in the census, so everyone who was counted gave a half shekel. So you really wouldn't have to count the skull, would you? Count the half shekel. But if you're doing it like an accountant, you'd probably have one guy count the shekel, the half shekels, and another guy count the skulls, and then see if they reconcile. Just saying, just throw that out there. I would have done it that way if I would have counted both just to make sure. Passed over on the reckoning. Let's see. For everyone that was counted in the census is how we would say it in English. The way it was said literally, I'm using English words, but the way it was said literally in Hebrew was passed over on the reckoning. We would say was counted in the census. From the age of 20, the son of 20 years, from the age of 20 and up, because it said and from higher and up, for 600,000 and 3,550. So let me read that without all the weird stuff. A half shekel per person, one half the weight of a shekel, was the weight of the tabernacle shekel for everyone that was counted in the census from the age of 20 and up, for 600,000 and 3,550. All right, so we can compare this to Exodus chapter 30:13. We've already had this. All who are counted will give one half shekel, with a shekel in the sanctuary, 20 gerah, which somehow we know that's 1/20th part of a shekel. The half shekel is the offering to Yahweh. After giving a long-winded numerical explanation that somehow made all the numbers work out, Cassuto said the following. As for the problem of the dates, this may be solved in the light of the knowledge gained from the documents discovered at Mari, M-A-R-I, Mari. That's 18th century BCE. Think about how long ago that was. 18th century BC. Of course, we say E now. With regard to the census taken there, we literally have in human possession a written census from a place called Mari, M-A-R-I, that was taken in the 18th century BCE. They dug it up, they found it, and it was still intact. With regard to the census taken there, these documents show that the organization of a census was not an easy matter accomplished in a single day, but one that required considerable time. The officers used to draw up lists of names on clay tablets, and that's what they found were these clay tablets. That's how he knows. And at the end, special officials classified and examined the tablets, and on the basis of this information made their calculations and computed the results of the census. The Israelites, insofar as it is possible to determine, did not make use of clay tablets, as did the people of Mesopotamia, but employed pot shards. The Ophel Ostrakon and the list of names on Ostrakon number 2 of the I'm not sure how this is pronounced. Lachish, I think, pot shards may be documents of this kind. So he's given an actual example found in Mesopotamia on pot shards of an actual Hebrew census. At least that's what at this point, that's what scholars at this point think they're looking at. He went on, in view of this, we may assume the purport of the verse to be as follows. In the first year of the exodus of the Israelites from the land of Egypt, at the same time as the artisans were occupied with the construction of the tabernacle, the first steps were taken in connection with the census. The children of Israel presented themselves one by one before the officers in charge, who registered their names on ostraca, and that's Ostraca, in case you want to know, in case you want to Google it or something, and received from each one silver weighing half a shekel. This silver was used for the work of the tabernacle, for the making of the pedestals. While Casuto's explanation is long-winded and sometimes hard to follow, he may well be right. But, then again, maybe this is simply a case of the Yehudim not following chronological order, something which Casuto was a great proponent. I think that's all of this other explanation that, pages and pages and pages of mind-numbing mathematical equations trying to make it work out is nonsensical. I think that it was written after the fact, and they already knew the number, and it was just put in there. Because this assumes that this was all written as it took place. And it may well have been. But that wouldn't mean that the writer wouldn't go back in and fill in the numbers after the fact. I'm just saying, just throwing that out there. I think it's a little out there. I'm not saying he's wrong by any means. It may well be right. But I'm just saying the more simple explanation is usually the right one. Anyway, verse 27. And it was 100 circular the silver to cast bases the holy. And this is how Casuto knew what it was used for. And bases the curtain, 100 bases to 100, the circular pieces to pedestal. Right there you have it. So this is how he knew, because it's in the next verse. So Vayahi, and it became Ma'at, there's your word 100, well, hundreds. Ki kar, there's your word for the circle, so you're thinking of coin type things. Ha kasef, of course, that's the silver. La zaket, this is a word to cast, to pour, so they heated up the silver and poured it out as a liquid, literally. So the word for cast, I think, is what we use. Then it's adne, those are the bases of the column, the pedestal. HaKodesh, so it's the pedestals of the sanctuary. And then it says ve'et, and adne, the bases, the pedestal, ha-pa-rochet, the pedestals that went to the curtain, the veil. Me'at, there's your word 100, adne, bases. Li me'at, 200, ha-ki-kar, those are the silvery, round is what I meant to say. Circular, think of a coin. Ki-kar, as again your circle word. So you've had this twice. La-aden, so there's your word for pedestal. So here's your translation. And 100 round weights of silver were cast for the pedestals of the tabernacle. And the pedestals of the veil, 100 pedestals, one circular piece per pedestal. Wow. So you can think, I've been telling you, think in terms of a coin, but either that coin was some seriously, I mean, they got a lot of coverage out of this little bitty coin, or those were some big round chunks of silver and gold. Just saying. All right, verse 28. And the thousands and 7 and hundreds and 5 and 70 did hooks or made hooks to pillars and overlay heads them and filleted with them. I think fillet's the right way to say that. I'm going to go through these individual words because, believe me, we've already done it. What we're talking about, this is the Vav, the hook, and then these are the hooks for the pillars, and they were overlaid Zipah. They were overlaid Rosh Shehem. The tops of them were overlaid Vechishak, and that's to join. Oh, I knew there's something wrong with that word. To join together. I think this is the word for dowel. Let me look at this. Yeah, it is. The translation, and 175 hooks were made for the columns and overlaid their tops and dowels. The dowels were overlaid with silver as well. Because remember me saying something about the silver, it seemed to me like it wouldn't be strong enough. But if they made it out of a stronger silver, or a stronger metal, or they made it out of wood and then they covered it, then maybe whatever you're making would be strong enough. But if you made these hooks literally just 100% out of silver, and their clasp, and particularly the dowels, silver dowels, I'm sorry, but I can't imagine that could actually hold these things together and be worth anything. But I think that if there was a stronger metal that was mixed with it, or if it was made of a stronger metal and then just covered with it, that would be a different story, because then you'd have it strong enough. So I think that's what we're talking about. Now we can compare this one to chapter 27, verse 17. All the columns round about the court will have silver dowels and hooks. Sorry, and their pedestals of brass. Kasudal pointed out an anomaly in the past two verses, saying in these two verses are enumerated all the silver articles in the tabernacle, and it is stated that they were all made from the silver of those of the construction who were numbered. If such be the case, for what purpose was the contribution of the silver mentioned earlier in the account of the bringing of the contributions in chapter 35, verse 24? What was that silver used for? Again, I think the problem here is everybody's making a bunch of do about nothing here. I think what we're talking about is something being out of chronological order, something being added to the text after the fact, probably by the original writer, and we're making a big bunch of whoopee out of nothing. I don't think that we're talking about this. All this silver was brought in, and we don't know what it was used for, but everything else was made out of this other silver. That's not what the text says. The text says it was made out of the silver from the offering, and then it talks about this silver being used for this, basically for the same thing. So I'm guessing that the more logical thing here is there wasn't enough silver in the offering, and more had to be given. Pretty simple, if you ask me. All right, verse 29. And brass the wave 70 piece and 1,000 and 400 shekel. All right, so here we go with a whole bunch of numbering again, and words that we've already had. So I'm going to move on to the translation. And the brass of the offering was 70 pieces and 1,400 shekel. Honestly, I just think that they're saying that the brass weight was equal to that much of it, to that many shekel. But it's hard to say, actually. Now, verse 30. And he made in her, or in it, remember it and her, or it and he are the same thing in Hebrew. All right, so, and he made in it bases, entrance, tent, appointed times, and altar the copper, and grate the copper that to it, and all articles the altar. All right, I'm going to go through this via us. And he made, that's to labor, to work about, to make. You get it, asa. So he made ba, which is how you say in it. Literally, that's in her, but in it. He made in it adne. He made it in its bases, the pedestal. Petach, the pedestals of the entrance. Ohel, the entrance of the tent. There's your word for tent. So remember, ohel is the more technical word when we're talking technical, and mishkan is the more formal name for it. Because that's when we're talking about it as a completed. I wanted to say building. It really wasn't a building, but a completed. What would I say? Let's just call it a building made of. Not made of sticks and stones. All right, so anyway, Moed. So it's the tent of appointed times. This is the place where the meetings are set. This is Ve'et Mizbah. That's an altar. Mizbah is the altar. Ha-ne-choshet. So it's the copper altar. Ve'et mi-chebar. That's the great, like a, what's an example I can give for that? Yeah, you remember those old round barbecue grills that had the round silver thing with the metal that crossed? That's a grate, right? It'd be something along those lines, probably more substantial, but it's made out of copper. Then for it says all the articles, that's everything that would be needed to, to turn the meat over and prep it and blah, blah, blah. All the little things you have around your barbecue pit. Ha-mizbah, around that altar. So the translation, and he made with its pedestals for the entrance of the tent of appointed times, and the altar of copper and the grate of copper connected to it, because literally it said that to it. Well, that means connected to it, and all the vessels for the altar. Onkelos by Drazen and Wagner stated the following. Hazkuni adds that much more than is accounted for in verse 24 through 29 of gold, silver, and copper was actually donated. The accounting here was just for the metals actually utilized in the construction. So he's saying there was a lot more given, and what we're getting in these numbers are that which is utilized for the actual construction. Actually, we're getting both. I've pointed that out already. The accounting here was just for the blah, blah, blah. The overage in chapter 36, verse 7, was used for the benefit of the sanctuary and the community. That's all conjecture. There's no way for him to know that. He's probably right. I'm not saying I'm arguing with him. I'm just saying, but it is conjecture. He's just taking a wild-haired guess here. As pointed out by Casuto, there was overage, at least with the silver. So Haskini's explanation is plausible. However, we must keep in mind that it is still speculation. Okay, I kind of said that already, right? Verse 31. And bases the court round about, and bases gate the court, and all stake his, these are tent stakes, not the kind you eat, Mishkan, and all stake its, the court round about it. Again, we've already had all of these words. We've gone through them several times, so I'm going to skip toward the end, especially since time is starting to catch up with me. So my translation of 31 is, and pedestals for the court around it, and pedestals for the gate of the court, and all its, speaking of the gates, all its stakes, and all the stakes for the Mishkan, and the court around it. So remember, we're adding verse 1 from chapter 39 to the end of this chapter, since it has been wrongly divided by the English translations. All right, so I'm at chapter 39, verse 1, depending on what book you're reading. Right? So this should be the last verse of the real last verse of chapter 38. So we're on our last one, is what I'm telling you. It's a lengthy one, but we had just enough time. Literally in English, and from the blue and the purple and scarlet, the crimson made they garments plaited, for plaid. They made plaid to minister in holy, and made they garments the holy, that to Aharon as that commanded Yahweh Moshe. So in other words, God commanded Moshe. We have the word for blue, which is from the shellfish, the word for purple, which is reddish and all that, and then you have the word for scarlet, which comes from the worm, and the word they have crimson, and that comes also from a worm. Asu, that's to make, to manufacture, to fabricate. So they made, should say probably garments. Yeah, big day. These are garments, coverings. I mean, it could be everything from the shirt and pants I'm wearing to the talit that I wear over the top of that. Everything that they wore. So you got to think more in line of what they wore back then. They, by the way, didn't wear talitot back then. They wore something that, you remember the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston? That little outfit, that little poncho looking thing that he wore, that is actually period correct. That's about the only thing they got right in that story. But I'm just saying, it probably wouldn't have been read like that, but you know, they were trying to make him out to be royal, so whatever. So these are the garments that they would have worn. And then it says serad, which is plated. It's like a coat of mail. I don't really think that's the idea. They did have, they call that, is that chainmail is what they call that? Yeah. Think of the Romans, you know, in the Dark Ages, the Crusaders and stuff, that chainmail thing that they wore because it stopped blades from poking through, you know, it was made out of metal. They actually did have that back this far back. In one of these chapters, I actually showed you a picture of one that was actually predates this event. So not by much, but it did predate the event by a couple hundred years. So they did have that, but it's not likely what they were wearing. This was not battle clothes. They're more likely describing plaid material. Just throwing that out there. Because otherwise it would have been more like a chain link type thing, and you would have seen their undergarments underneath, I suppose. I don't think that was the idea. So I'm just saying it was probably plaid. And it says le sharet. There's your word for minister. Sharet. That's, you can call a person sharet, which is a minister. That's also a common Hebrew name in the first century. And it's the idea to wait on, to serve, to minister to somebody. So if you use the word ministry in your title, that's not a Christian thing. This is the right word. Ministry or minister is the right word for sharet. Not avodah, but sharet. And it is the correct word. It is the one they're using here. Bakodesh, so it's for the service in the tabernacle. Sanctuary, that's the word. Try to keep that straight. Vaya asu, so, and they made, they produced, they labored, they manufactured, obviously. Big day, the garments. HaKodesh, they were holy garments. Le Aharon, they were for Aharon, Aaron is what we call him these days. Ka'asher, which Ziva. Ziva? What? Not Ziva David. Ziva, that's to command. That's to establish. It was established by Yahweh, by our God. And he said it, of course, to Moshe. So here's your translation. And they made plaited garments, or plaited garments, or garments of plaid, from blue, purple, scarlet, and crimson, for ministry in the sanctuary. And they made the holy garments for Aharon, according to that which Yahweh commanded Moshe. Pretty straightforward. There is a comparison here from 28:2, and you will make holy garments for Aharon. Of course, it goes on in that verse and says, your brother for glory and for splendor. Holy garments, of those words. Even Ezra said that the garments were called holy because they were worn in the holy place. And that's an important thing. They didn't wear these clothes outside of their duties, right? So it was essentially only worn in the holy place, but not only. When they had their big processions and their big holidays and stuff like that, there were times when they wore this clothing and went down to get water and marched before the crowds and all that. Yes, they were worn outside the temple, but not like daily wear. You know, it had to be connected to a holiday or connected to something that had to do with God, you know, like doing their work in the actual holy place. I believe it's more accurate to say that they were called holy because they were only worn while performing their duties in the holy place and for the holy service. This concludes our journey through chapter 38. Shalom, shalom, y'all.